Well, I'm in rhetoric and composition, which is kind of a subset of English studies or English literature. And what we do is we teach writing, and I'm on the digital literacies side of that. And also, so I'm at the dissertation stage, and I'm also an assistant director of the Digital Writing and Research Lab, which is one of the more long-standing institutions that investigates online and digital writing and more traditional writing practices. It's been around since the 1980s. My research is on the intersection between community literacy and digital literacy. So I started to do writing online using Google Maps as a writing tool and stuff like that, and then we started to work with nonprofits and found that local nonprofits don't have the time or the expertise to really like create different forms of online ways to tell their stories or interactive ways to tell their stories. That sort of snowballed into this project that I'm working on now, which is called the Mark Community Project. It's set in a small town about 17 miles outside of Waco, and there's now 5 or 6 different disciplines working from UT and Baylor working there. We have classes of students going in there working with kids in the middle and the high school, and we're setting up all sorts of different projects. So it's, even though I come from a very specific discipline of writing, I've just the network effect has landed me into this very interdisciplinary, different kinds of practices kind of project. So yeah, I suppose the engaged aspect, working with communities who would have no relationship to a place like the University of Texas. I come from a very small fishing village on the west coast of Ireland, so I've got a feel for small town life, even though it's not what I expected to be doing with my work. I think there is certainly a personal aspect of like understanding the way that these small places work, the kind of social dynamics of them. And I'm really interested in the application of digital technologies across different disciplines, right? So even though I focus particularly on literacy studies, I've been working with social workers and architecture people, and I've run a summer camp with middle to high school kids, and it's really expanded my understanding of what my own practice is, because we've all got to meet each other halfway. So coming from a particular discipline, I might have had certain ideas about the way my work enters the world, right? And this has completely exploded that, which I think which hooks back to DML, because this week has been very much that kind of expansion moment as well, right? You know, we're seeing people from different practices, walks of life, different disciplines, different schools, different worldviews, all sorts of different agendas, sitting down in a room, getting to know each other in a very short, kind of intense period of time, has really helped us all to rethink what we're doing. I suppose, not a glib answer, but right now I'm really interested about the places that we forget. Like places like DML and places like UT, my department, we're doing really cool projects with very specific places or groups of people. Sometimes they're around the university or just through different connections. And 99% of the places in the world are just like totally forgotten, particularly rural areas which are on the decline. And I'm really fascinated about is there a set of generalizable practices that I'm in the middle of now where I could sort of say, okay, we're just going to go into this town and we'll make something work. And we don't need a huge infrastructure, and we don't need, we don't even necessarily need to have a core question, except that maybe this place needs some help, and we could learn something from being there. Yeah, I mean, it's really becoming, it's sort of kind of emerging through just my thinking over the last couple of months. But these are places that, yeah, they're just dying in a lot of ways. You know, the people who remember the good times are going into retirement. The kids growing up think that this place where they're living is all that there is in some ways, and unless they've got the means to get to college or get out, then there's very few opportunities for them to get out of there in some ways. Not that getting out of there is the thing to do, but just their frame of reference is very small. Texas is huge. You know, these towns are really far apart from each other, and they don't necessarily have a great connection to, let's say, like Austin or Dallas, and think digital technologies can really help us connect them in some ways, but more importantly, creating or fostering new kinds of relationships among the people there, just to get the circulation going again. It matters a lot. I didn't really know what was going to happen coming in. I mean, we had a schedule, and we knew that there was going to be talks, and we knew that there was going to be workshops. So it all sounds pretty much like stuff that we've done before, but once you get into it and you meet a whole bunch of people who are doing really exciting work and interesting work, and all the mentors coming in who are that further along the journey that we're all on in some way, even though our careers may look nothing like theirs in some ways, but they've chosen a path that's brought them to this place, which has created this thing that is DML. So it's I suppose this week, through the talks and through the workshops and the visit yesterday to USC, kind of gives a fractal perspective on where we could bring our work, and actually helps us clarify what that work is. Because I think one thing that kind of unifies all of us, if it's a unifying factor, is that we're all kind of on the fringes of different disciplines, right? That in some ways the questions that we're asking, we have to reach. You know, if I'm in the humanities, but I naturally gravitate towards education and sociology as tools and to help me do what I do, and projects, to look at projects and try and model my work on different kinds of projects. So I suppose this week sort of condensed all those kinds of things that we do in a very distributed way in our own lives, but like getting a bunch of people together and going to see projects and talking about them all the time, both in like formal settings and informal settings, like at dinner, and was really important just to kind of get an overall sense of this, what probably is an emerging field. And if, you know, I think that's what part of DML's mission is, sort of that there is a field here, right? And trying to understand what that is and what our place in it is. I think that's what's been really helpful for me, and I did not expect that coming in. I had a fantastic session with Tom Bolstorff on writing, and it was probably the best writing advice I've ever got from anyone in terms of like the genre of the academic article. So that to me was a massive takeaway for me right now. You know, just when I'm heading into the core dissertation phase, it was just extremely useful to get someone who's an editor to like help see what's going on in an article and how you can fix certain things without getting overly anxious about them. So I didn't expect that to happen, but I'm really glad that happened. I suppose the core takeaway is that that it's kind of proving my instincts to be true, that we're moving into a phase of much more intense collaboration and interdisciplinary mashups, and that it can be done, and that it's okay to do it, and that there are ways that you can navigate an institution that doesn't necessarily prize those kinds of practices and make it work, because you have other networks that you can use for support. The organization always had my attention because I read the blogs, so good job on keeping the blogs going. So I read the blogs. I knew about the conference. I hadn't been to the conference, but the organization was always on my radar in one way. And then when I saw the call, I'd always had that desire to be part of a group that meets, right, rather than being part of, let's say, a blogosphere, you know, that I get to meet some people. And actually it was just really good practice to do an application which says, this is my work, this is how I might be able to contribute to this particular organization. So it was a kind of an exercise for me. I've been doing a lot of because my project is kind of distributed, and I sit at the fringe of a very rich discipline, but it's kind of at the fringe. I do a lot of kind of elevator talk type stuff, and you know, writing letters, and part of it was an exercise, but obviously part of it as well was that this would be a really great opportunity to put a face or a set of faces to the DML and figure out what if I have a place here and what that could be.